Welcome to Bat Therapy, mental health through the lens of comics and film. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We're your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources.
All right, so we're super excited today. So some of you who listen to us a ton probably remember we did Batgirl Year One. So today we're actually talking to one of the co-authors of that, also one of the authors of Nightwing Year One, Scott Beatty. So Scott Beatty has written several hundred comic book stories for DC Comics, also other publishers, including CrossGen Entertainment, Dark Horse Comics, Dynamite Entertainment, and IDW Publishing. He's most notable for releases including Robin Year One, Batgirl Year One, Nightwing Year One, Batman Gotham Knights, Joker Last Laugh, Gen 13, Number of the Beast, Ruse, Buck Rogers, The Last Phantom, and many others. So we are super stoked to have you today with us, Scott.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you came across the Batgirl episode, and then recently we just happened to come across you mentioning that you had come across our episode, and that's how we connected.
I'm not gonna lie. When I saw the review, I was running around my house. I was so happy. I was like, "Oh my god, we've been discovered!" Like it felt so good. And I think part of it's just because it's like, okay, this is the author, like saying like, "Hey,
Yeah.
this is a great perspective." It's kind of, it feels so validating. I'm not gonna lie. Like I was really excited, and immediately we were like, "Hey, we should see if he wants to come on the podcast,"
Why
because
not?
we saw your review, like, "Hey, maybe they'll give Nightwing or Robin this treatment." I was like, "We absolutely will." Like I was
Heck yeah.
super excited about it. So yeah, thank you so much for listening.
Well, thank you for reviewing it. It's really gratifying to see that story and the other year ones endure after 20 years. They've been in publication, and I really found your analysis and your reviews to be thoughtful and insightful, and the kind of things I'm an English teacher, creative writing teacher in my secret identity. So I love to see people look at the work on the level of literature and the character motivations, because I think that all great stories are character driven. So getting into Barbara's psyche was really nice to see.
Yeah. It's one of those things where like a lot of times we're used to, you read a book or see a story and you critique it, but especially, I mean, like, so that makes me think back to English class. It's like, well, you never got to hear back from the author again on what you were saying and what you see with their story. So it's really cool to have that back and forth. It's a really neat opportunity. Like Keaton said, we
Yeah.
appreciate it. Even though we, also appreciate your good-heartedness with the fact that we're like, Batgirl, all dudes, writing the story. They did a good job, but
Well, yeah, no, I think that's one of the things that impressed me most. Well, not impressed me, but that I found most gratifying, because I mean, we really went into that story to try to make Barbara um, be able to stand up to all the men in her life, from Dad on down to Batman and Robin, and to really stand up to anyone who told her no, and that her reason, her raison d'etre in the story is that no one believes in her, and she believes most acutely in herself. So at the end of the day, I think that the scene that really resonates for me after all these years is when she's talking to Batman and she says, "I'm doing this because I can and because Gotham needs me." And alone among all of the Bat characters, she's the one who is not created out of tragedy. She
Right.
just wants to do the right thing, and she has all the skills. She's actually probably the smartest one among the entire Bat family. And so writing her was really easy. I mean, Barbara's voice, she wrote herself. So I'm just happy that I was able to, to help chronicle her story, because
we really wanted her to
uh, just sell, what she does.
Yeah.
And, we had the benefit too of this being a backstory to where she was in Birds of Prey as Oracle.
Mm.
So we wanted everything to lead to that because I think that, her later story is about tragedy, but in the beginning, she did it because, men, in her life said, I don't think you can. And she said, watch me.
The hell
Yeah.
you say. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And oh gosh, I love it. I absolutely love it. And the thing that I think makes her so cool too is that she has legitimately been two completely separate superheroes. I mean, Oracle was in so many ways an even bigger impact than Batgirl was
Oh yeah.
at
I mean, she
because I
keeps the
mean,
entire team running. They
yeah,
don't
she
function
keeps the
without
entire
her.
team running, and just like the impact that she had, like, hey, look, I am this this Killing Joke story is not going to be what
Hmm.
makes me. This I have so much more to offer. I'm so much more of a person. So yeah, I absolutely love her as a character for sure.
Yeah, Chuck, who co-wrote Batgirl Year One and was the original writer on Birds of Prey, made it clear to all the artists that whenever they drew Barbara's chair, that it didn't have handles. That
Hmm.
that she wasn't going to be pushed or by anyone. That she was able to fight from the chair, and I think that's something that John Ostrander did in Batman Chronicles, I believe, one of the first like back stories for Oracle, that Richard Dragon taught her to fight from a seated position, and
I
that
love that.
she retrained herself and rebranded,
Hmm.
in this whole crucible of having lost the use of her leg. So, uh, and I think a lot of those Birds of Prey stories were lauded by the community of people with paralysis
Yep.
and walking difficulties because it was an accurate portrayal.
Yeah.
There wasn't a rush to ever fix her,
Right.
if I can use that term, to cure her paralysis in some magical or super scientific comic book way. That this is who she was, and that really allowed her to enjoy a whole new second life in the comics.
I definitely agree with you that so a lot of work that I do is disability community with mental health. I have less familiarity, but some with like more physical disabilities, but I definitely try and diversify what content I'm taking in. So trying to make sure that I'm not looking at one type of say superhero. And I love that about Oracle, where absolutely she has all of these strengths and no one's going to say, oh, she can't do it because she's in a wheelchair. No one's going to dare say that Oracle has these limitations. There's so much that she's able to do and it's phenomenal. So let's shift
Okay.
to Dick Grayson and Nightwing Year One.
Okay.
Which funny enough, before you came on, we actually Keenan and I were just touching base about things, and Barbara actually shows up a little bit in there. We thought it was funny that Dick tried some moves on her despite having a girlfriend in just that little snippet.
Yeah, that scene takes some it takes some criticism. That's probably, look, you either ship uh Dick Corey or
Mm,
Babs Dick,
Right.
in terms of like which couple you see together. And
Yeah.
my very first stories that were formative for me were Robin and Batgirl. So
mm,
that's the first love. When he was in the Titans, he was completely out of the Bat offices and the Bat universe, so they were able to kind of like follow that story through. And of course, I'm also someone who appreciates the Nightwing Starfire long-term
yeah.
relationship. So, um, in Nightwing Year One, we made some great attempts to try to sandwich our story between the events of the Judas contract, where
Okay.
he goes off, like to acknowledge that and not retcon anything. I mean,
Mm,
I'm a person and a writer for DC who believes in the history, in the canon. So I think all of the Year Ones work really hard not to erase any previous story, but to try to
mm.
find room in the tapestry for all threads. So yeah, when he has a moment, I think he falls back on his unrequited crush, and I think Babs puts him in his place again,
Oh yeah.
and reminds him that he's being tempted. So yeah,
Just goes to show even a superhero is not perfect.
No,
Yeah,
not at all. Not at all.
definitely. Even though I absolutely love Dick Grayson, I think we
Oh yeah.
we talked about him in earlier episode. One of the things I said about him was they always talk about Batman and Robin being the dynamic duo, and it's great because of the alliteration. But at the same time, when you look up dynamic, it means fluid and constantly changing. They're constantly bouncing off each other and flowing back and forth. And so I do love that in this story, it's basically the shift that had to
Hmm.
happen. Like Dick Grayson is grown up. Like he is not a child anymore. He's not really
Yeah, it's coming of
Robin
age for him.
anymore. Like he's doing
Yeah.
his own thing with the Titans. He's back and forth. He's in between, but Batman is still saying, "Hey, you have a job to do." It was very funny because there were times I was looking at their relationship and it wasn't the brother relationship. Me and Amelia were talking about it's not the brother relationship that you normally see. It was it felt like either the father son relationship, but it also to me kind of felt like the boss and worker
Tricky
relationship
working with your family.
for sure. Right, right.
Yeah.
Working with
Yeah.
family. That's what it felt like for sure.
Yeah, one of the things I prefer the father son stories where I mean, obviously it's a complicated relationship, but I prefer those to the ones that make them more like brotherly. So I really liked seeing how Dick's talking about like essentially these two fathers that he had, Bruce and Alfred, and just trying to maneuver this whole thing when Bruce Wayne is one of your parents and he's got quite the personality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that in all of the year ones, the 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 way we approached it is that Bruce is heavily damaged,
Yeah.
and emotionally arrested. I mean, there's a whole laundry list of things to go over there. And, it's no coincidence that Robin is the brightly colored costume
Mm-hmm.
between the two of them. I mean, he's the distraction, he's the target. And I think on a good day, Bruce, recognizes his Robin's achievements, Dick's, partnership and what it means to the dynamic duo. But he also is reluctant to kind of show that because, nothing matters but the war on crime. Nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
So, he can't be too touchy feely in terms of his emotions. And when he feels that Dick is stepping away from the partnership, I think he's going to react in a childish way because he stopped being an 11-year-old when his parents were murdered, and he became Batman at 11. So I don't think the maturation
Was secondary to his worldwide training to become
an urban vigilante. And
He's definitely rough around the edges, especially when it comes to. I mean, at one point, I think Dick was saying how he said you could cry about it. Essentially, you could express your emotions, you could feel your emotions about your parents, or you could do something with it. And
yeah,
almost this sense of you not being able to do both. And so it really shows the
It's
sense of
true.
like Bruce is not the parent who can help you emotionally process and mature through something. He's action oriented. He can really help you hone some skills and kick some serious butt. But yeah, he's like you said, in a lot of ways he's arrested in that childhood past. And it's I love in your story, and I couldn't quite tell if I think you were doing this on purpose, but to me it looked like there were these hints along the way that Bruce was actually trying to allow Dick Grayson to turn into the adult that he was going to be, turn into his own person. Um, but he couldn't do it outright because he's Bruce Wayne. And so he had to create these really intricate scenarios that lead to this place where he and Dick can thrive as separate heroes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you read the current Nightwing run now, that's written by Tom Taylor, brilliant stuff, where you have Dick and Bruce able to stand on a rooftop together and say, "I love you, Dad." They can actually
Yeah.
say the L word, and then they hug, and it just melts everybody, and it's brilliant.
Oh,
I love Tom's stuff because I think it is the natural progression of where we were 20 years ago writing this,
yes.
and I think that you know Bruce had to go through all of these moments of change through Nightfall, where his back was broken, and Dick didn't replace him to start. It was Jean-Paul Ballet as Rael. And then Cataclysm, Contagion. Like, he had to go through just this entire, panoply of just crap in order to get to the place now where the Bat family has quintupled, and where he realizes that now he truly has a family, and he's able to appreciate each of them in their own kind. So at the time writing it, it still gets some flack from readers who say this is mean Batman, and I push back on it because when we were writing it at the time, two of our, at least one story for me that was a real mentor text was a Superman Robin team up in, I think it was Legends of the DC Universe, written by, I'm thinking it was Kelly Puckett. And in the story, Robin goes and has a day with Superman, his uncle. And they have a wonderful day out, and Robin comes back, Dick comes back, and he is so jazzed. He's like, oh man,
Bruce, it was awesome. He can fly. He shoots lasers out of his eyes. And, he did this and this. And oh my gosh, he made a diamond out of coal. And Bruce's response is the jealous father after his kid has been off with his stepdad. And he says, he's an alien. He's an alien. Never forget that. And it's just withering. And I thought, this is who Bruce Wayne is. Okay. When he is somehow, when his feelings are hurt, he's going to strike back in the most mean way, of course, because it's projection. He's pushing off, all of his feelings that he's balled up inside him that, takes the form of a fist, for his entire life. And so, it's not for lack of love. I mean, he's got the adult Robin costume, but he realizes that he's got to say goodbye by pushing Robin out of the nest, for lack of another metaphor. And just so coincidentally, he comes across another kid who is stealing the wheels on the Batmobile. And it's like, hey, okay, let's do this again.
Jason.
And it's different for every kid. And that's why I think it's been so important over the years that Dick is not Jason, is not Tim, is not Stephanie, is not Damian, that there is a progression of the Robins, and some have worked out well and some have not worked out at all.
And what's cool is Bruce has grown with every single one of them. And it's like you said, I thought it was interesting you said that some readers just didn't like it. It's like, this is mean Batman, but at the same time, Batman can change just like everyone else. Like you said, you've been writing this for so long. It's really awesome to see him now being able to say, I love you to Dick. And one of the things I also love about this is so many times I feel like if a kid were suddenly in the Batcave and Batman's like, I'm going to train you, Dick respects Bruce, but he didn't idolize him to the point where he's like, I'm going to be just like him. From very early on, it was like, no, that's you. And I'm going to smile a bit more. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to make jokes. I'm going to have fun. And I do love that about him, that it still remained, because even when he's interacting with the new Robin, it's a little bit abrasive, but he also just rolls with it. He's way more dynamic. If you're talking about the actual definition of dynamic, he's way more dynamic than Batman is. They're the dynamic duo because of Dick Grayson.
Yeah, Dick Grayson is really something special about him that I think also pulls Bruce over time to be more of a father figure. I don't think Bruce could do some of the things that in some storylines later he's able to do with Damian if it wasn't for Dick Grayson. And honestly, Dick Grayson coming back around as an adult and helping Bruce along with some of these things once he's old enough and separated enough from it to be able to look at it from the outside.
Yeah, there's a Batman and Robin Year One book coming out next month by Mark Waid and Chris Samney. And, I don't know much more about it other than what Mark has said online, that it's going to explore the relationship between Dick and Bruce, kind of pivoting from the point where they realize that, this is a circus kid. He's used to going out on his own. But I think that the things that you were saying really kind of strike to the heart of Dick Grayson. He's an optimist. And, going back to his core origin story, he got justice. They found
Mm,
Boss Zuko and put him away, and so he's kind of done. And in the Batman continuity, this was sort of retconned in Zero Hour, where he never found his parents' killer. He never found Joe Chill. So Batman is always looking for the guy who got away.
mm,
But Dick did the job, but now he feels a sense of loyalty to the boss. And he's the only sidekick who created a whole new identity because this is what he knows. He feels a sense of responsibility. So, when he's asked to step in as Batman, he eagerly does it. When he's not being Batman, I mean, in the Nightwing series, he became a cop in Bloodhaven in his day job. I mean, his want to do good, I think,
yeah,
is stronger than any other motivation. So, I mean,
absolutely.
to me, he's the nicest guy in comics, which
Yeah.
is going up against like Barry Allen, the Flash, and other characters. I mean, that's pretty
Saying
tall
something.
competition. Yeah.
Right. For sure. And I do also really love that when it comes to even like when it comes to him being fired, he even handles this situation in a very mature way. I really feel like he didn't get like too erratic or anything. He's like, all right, I'm gonna go to Metropolis and talk to Clark about this. I'm gonna chat with him about it a little bit. And he quickly does come to the conclusion, like, okay, I wasn't just doing this for
Hmm.
Batman. I wasn't just doing this for Bruce. I know that this is something I want to keep doing. I like helping people. That oath still meant a lot to me, but I have to walk my own path.
Yeah, and I think that keeps coming back around in this story that I really love because it definitely is that you are becoming your own person. He's becoming an adult, and you're seeing it through this superhero lens where he's having to question, okay, so here's what I was raised in, and clearly it was important enough to me to go this far, but now I really need to step back and say, okay, well, what is it, why, why is this so important, and if I'm going to keep going, it can't just be for Bruce's reasons. It can't, or to because I'm angry at being fired, or how this happened. What is the meaning? What do I value? What do I care about? And making it his own. I love how he also went back to the root. He went back to the
Yes.
circus, and you were talking about going to Superman. He does all these wonderful things to really try and pull his narrative together for himself, because a lot of times people will struggle because their life feels disjointed, disconnected, and he's saying, okay, let me use what's at my disposal to really work through, okay, how did I get from point A to point B to point C, and where do I want the next point to be? And I think it's so cool that he pulls all these things together to make it his own. So his costume very much comes from the circus, and it comes from Batman and the Batcave and what he's done with the Bat family. And I think that's just so great to see him be able to do that, and be able to take a not perfect father and see how he also even maneuvers that piece. I loved at the end he talks about, not avoiding but accepting, and something along the lines of, you did the best you could given the circumstances in terms of being there for Dick. And I loved that part too, where in becoming true to himself, he also was able to accept parts of growing up with Bruce and what that looked like for him.
Yeah. Everything you said, I agree with. Um, so the narrative structure of all the year ones was really to kind of take the story of what it means to be part of the Bat family and kind of look at it from different angles. I mean, we of course went from Batman Year One, which was narrated in this kind of journal,
Mm,
omniscient
Yeah.
voiceover, and from Batman's perspective, Bruce's perspective. And when we did the first one, Robin Year One, we decided to do it from Alfred because Alfred is really struggling with I tried to raise this first boy to be a man, and look what he's doing, and he's deeply troubled, and I'm trying to help him, but now there's this new boy,
Yeah.
and he's trying to be the voice of reason. Like, this doesn't make a lot of sense. And in Batgirl, it was Bab's voice. She was taking ownership and coming to her own voice. And in Nightwing, we find out at the end that he's recording a tape, and he calls himself a talker among writers.
Yes.
And that's a nod to every holy something quip that he's ever uttered in the heated pitch of battle. So I think that what we wanted to do was to take the Judas Contract, which is the first appearance of Nightwing, and to me that story is sacrosanct. It is firmly in canon, and I didn't want to do anything to redact or change the moments of that.
It's a
But
great story.
and it introduced Nightwing and Jericho, and it had just all the Sturm and Drang of the Teen Titans as they battled the Terminator, Deathstroke. But Nightwing's origin kind of got short shrift. They show up at Titan's Tower, Jericho and his mom, Adeline Wilson, and he's like, hold on a second. He runs upstairs. There's a mysterious silver briefcase. He comes downstairs and he's Nightwing. And so for years, as a teenager, reading that story, I'm like, where'd he get the suitcase? What's the backstory? And it was never established. So when we pitched Nightwing, I said, look, we've got to bring the Titans in, because somewhere when he took off the costume and did his big speech in New Teen Titans number 39, I believe it was, and then he went away and he said, I'm going to find myself. Well, this is where he found himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't necessarily tell the Titans that he got fired from Batman, because, that's kind of embarrassing. So, but he did have to go on this walkabout in order to figure out who he was. And part of it was explaining the disco collar, which I always thought was reminiscent of Deadman, who was also a circus aerialist. And, in my universe, reading The Brave and the Bold growing up, Batman teamed up with everybody, which in my twisted brain meant that the Batcave had all of these crazy characters that Dick got to watch from, behind a stalactite if he wasn't invited to the meeting. So, he had the most incredible childhood growing up. So, as he winds his way through the parts of his life, he ultimately is able to cobble together the name Nightwing from Uncle Superman, and then the costume from the circus, which is where he began. And, he's able to do some good there, not super heroics, but, saving somebody from a lion. And, he finds his, fighting sticks as, from there, like he kind of pulls it all together. And it was different from the Gauntlet, Batman Chronicles The Gauntlet, where we see his final test. And it was different than any other thing that he had ever done with Batman. But the goal was, how does Nightwing become who he was? And, the final scenes are that silver briefcase. And of course, Alfred was the costumer for all of them. So, the note, if you didn't figure it out, it was definitely written by Alfred. And it's Alfred's acknowledgement in that cursive font that everybody hates from Robin Year One, that, even Robins need to shed their wings and, molt new wings and take flight. So it's like, there, I explained it to the readers. And if you have the deluxe edition, which just came out, that's got two covers.
Ooh, that's nice.
Yeah, this one's my favorite because I worked with the editor and Scott McDaniel, like, not get a glare on it, to kind of like have all the elements, Batgirl and Alfred and Batman, the cave, the circus. Down here we've got the Titans, like, all parts of his life are kind of reflected here.
Nice.
And that was the goal, is to, we know the story, we know he's Nightwing, but what's his reason for it? Having a night out with Batgirl, having a night out with Jason Todd, and then ultimately coming together to save Batman. Batman doesn't need to be saved, but kind of does this time, and it's his kids who save Dad. So,
and what's even better is, even while saving him, Dick had to take a different perspective on it, because last time he's like fighting against Harvey Dent, and this time it's like, oh, this is the person I have to save, that was such a good way of doing that, just to show like, hey, he's learned so much. He's come so far. And I really do love how much, like you said, in this story, you see the backstory of every single part of them. The weapons, the costume, the name. You get to see all of it form up, which is exactly how life really is. Like, honestly, I look like, even I'm in like my bat cave, man cave right now, and every single thing in here has a story of its own that I vividly remember. I know where that beer koozie came from. I know where I was when I got that shirt. I know where I was when that Optimus Prime came out. Like, it's every single thing tells a story, and it's one of those things where it's always good whenever I feel like you're lost or in a confusing situation. It's always good to look back at your past and go back to your roots to try
Mm-hmm.
and figure out, hey, what's my next step? Well, let's see where I've come from so far.
Yep. And like you mentioned before, Keaton, he's not afraid to do it a different way. I loved the part where he was like, I'm a talker among writers. It's like, that is such a good way to describe Dick Grayson and why he stands out in certain ways. And it just, in that one simple phrasing, it just gives you this sense of almost, like an extrovert among introverts in some way, or he knows he's different than everyone else, and it's not a right or a wrong, but the way he's expressing himself and the way he leads into things is different. And I love that piece, and I also love how when you wrap up, you realize that he's finding the way to connect through being a talker in this recording with
Yes.
the writers. And I thought that was a really cool way of just showing, like, hey, I've accepted that we're all coming from our own different places and spaces, and we're moving forward in a way that it's gonna all work out okay. I thought that was
Yeah,
really neat.
I think that it's it all leads into all the stories that come after when they
Yeah.
reconcile. When Bruce finally recognizes, his Dick's achievements and his contributions, and is able to say, that he loves his son
Yeah.
in a way. So, like, you've got to look at this, and I think most of these emotional development growths, part of character development, are in the last 20, 30 years, because
Mm.
every story before that was about, the villain of the week, the colorful villains, and not allowing Bruce to move forward. And, now that he has this extended family, that, again, he has to treat each of them in their own way and help them to deal with their own traumas that brought them to being, part of the Bat family. And, he softened with time and,
Yep.
allowed himself to love. I mean, he nearly got married. And we
Mm-hmm.
know that, Selena Kyle's the love of his life. So, it's a tapestry that's, you gotta keep pulling the thread until the very end.
Yeah.
See what's
Yeah.
done. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And, and I mean, another thing, I mean, if you're looking at this, like you said, with everything that's canon right now, you do love seeing the Bat family like learn to grow and become better people, especially looking at how things are now. Because I mean, before, I feel like Alfred was the one that was holding everything together, and
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
like in with canon, I still don't believe they brought Alfred back. I think he's still gone after Tom King's run, and so now it's reading this and thinking about that coming later on. I feel like it hit me that much more.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Alfred not being alive, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
he is one of the most interesting characters to me,
Oh,
having
yeah.
written him through
Oh
all
yeah.
these year ones
Love him.
and on Gotham Knights. And I even wrote a 2-issue kind of origin of Alfred in
Mm.
Detective Comics
Yeah.
that came after the year ones, uh, about his days in MI6 and what like brought him to Gotham. And it's a fun little romp, but I just think he's the most interesting voice, because he's the voice of reason. He's the one who
Mm-hmm.
says, it's just these withering retorts that get under Bruce's skin, but like he needs them to be
They're
human.
so
Yes.
good.
And yeah, it just his voice being absent from the Batcave and Wayne Manor, I think is one of the one that's most tragic, because I think he
Yeah.
is the unifying force of
I
the
do
Bat
hope he
family.
comes. I do hope he comes back. I do miss Alfred.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if
Definitely
they can do
do.
it in an organic way, I just think killing him and having Bane kill him
Yeah.
That was
It
rough.
saddens me because I wrote an arc in Gotham Knights where Bane believed he was Bruce Wayne's brother, and very soap operatic. It was to reveal who Bane's actual father was, but Alfred was able to keep Bane in his place, and in my stories, Bane respected Alfred.
Yeah.
So to murder him in that way, I think, is inconsistent with the past. But the comics are comics. The next writer is going to do something different. So
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
So I guess, just in wrapping up, how is it to, I mean, it's obvious that you're a lover of comics. How is it to one day realize, whoa, I'm actually writing these things that I've read for so long?
so Amelia, this has been the most wish fulfillment, other than
Mm.
marrying the love of my life and fathering
Good
Aw.
save.
two
Good
great
save.
children's, two great kids. I always loved comics. I loved comics starting from a moment I was in the hospital as a kid for pneumonia, and my dad brought me some
Mm.
comics, and that was what kept me company during dark nights when the kid beside me was at his death's door.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know, it gave me hope. And after that, I couldn't get enough of comics. And through childhood and teenage years and everything, comics were always a safe place. And I believed in heroes.
Mm.
I believed in superheroes, the value of doing right, um, being responsible, punishing villainy, upholding justice. And when I majored in creative writing and got out of grad school, I was lucky enough to be able to kind of work my way into comics and to be able to tell these stories. And I think that, anybody who loves heroes, whether it's from Greek gods all the way down, like these archetypes are so strong. And I think it's what keeps us optimistic in dark times. And
Yeah.
my friends, we aren't in the most bright times right now. So I hope that
It's rough.
I hope this kind of literature reminds people of what honest and good people actually are, because I think we've given these titles to um, leaders and false prophets who don't uphold the standards.
Mm.
Batman would not vote for certain candidates.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
he would
Yeah.
actively contribute his vast fortune and to see that they aren't elected, and
Yeah.
Still, even
yeah.
there, Lex Luthor become.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I broke into comics with the help of, some friends and editors and the love of my spouse who supported me and, helped to enable my my career writing comics and also teaching along the way. And now I get the chance to help teach a new generation about comic book scripting and writing and
Oh,
remind them of
cool.
what these heroes are about. So, um, I feel like, you know, I've kicked some of the things on my bucket list,
Nice.
and
Awesome.
I think that's a mixed metaphor in terms of the bucket list. But I'm truly grateful, and I'm really grateful to readers who help keep these stories alive, because I think what is gratifying most of all is that the stories have stood the test of time, and continue to be reprinted. Because I know that when we wrote them, that I put all of it into it. I put my fandom, I put my love of the characters, and my respect for the characters too. And I think that I think hopefully people can see that it truly was an appreciation and an affection for Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon and Bruce Wayne and Alfred Pennyworth and all of them. That these are near and dear to me,
Yeah.
and to so many other writers. I can't think of anyone who's ever written comics that was not a fan of comics as a kid.
Right.
Yeah.
And if they tell you otherwise, they're lying. So.
Yeah. So are you like were you cool in the eyes of your kids while they were growing up, or
Um, I mean, when it's convenient.
nah, yeah. I was
Yeah,
like,
no,
surely
no,
a comic book writer.
absolutely.
Anyone.
My kids are into the entertainment industry and mediums. My son is a writer and aspiring filmmaker. My daughter is a puppeteer and aspiring visual effects
Oh, that's
creator.
awesome.
Oh,
And
cool. Yeah.
they were
Runs in their
homeschooled for
blood.
part of their life. So, I got to spend some formative time, and when I wasn't homeschooling, I was writing, comic books and teaching. So, they got to benefit from, being around that world, and they've gone to comics conventions, and they go to the comic shop when I go. So they have their own interests, but I like to think that exposing them to nerd culture, and I say that lovingly. That is not a
Oh yeah.
pejorative. That that helped to create their love of Indiana Jones and Muppets and
Mhm.
the Dark Crystal and all the things that they love independently from
Yeah.
me just showing them to me.
Yeah, they went
So
and became the Nightwings of their own.
yeah,
There you go. There you go.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and talking to us about the things that you've written and just what it's like to be you and to have written for comics that we all know and love. And definitely want to give you an opportunity to plug anything you've got going on.
Well, I think we kind of talked about it. I mean, again, Nightwing Year One came out in August. It's the deluxe edition. Every edition of this has sold out. So
Yes, it
hopefully,
has.
it's still available. But the one that just came out just about 2 weeks ago is the Batman Family Year One, and it's the first time that all three have been collected at the same time in a box set. So it's they're soft cover versions, but it's nice to see that they're all together because I mean, we wrote them one after the other, not expecting to create a trilogy, and we
Mm.
call it our sidekick trifecta.
I love
And
it.
what's interesting is that every single episode, from Robin, Batgirl to Nightwing, has the catchphrase "Not on your life, boy wonder," which
Mm.
is usually uttered to Dick, whether it's about his affections for Barbara or something along the way. But it's in every issue, and to be honest, our career trajectories went in different ways, but we really set up a Jason Todd Year One at the end, and
Oh, I
that
would love
proposal has been
that.
out there in the world. And I don't know if the success of these or the fact that they've been in print for 20 years will help that to ever happen. But we have an idea for
Yeah.
Jason's story that really sort of encapsulates, his tragedy with the Joker,
Yep.
his rebirth with the Red Hood, and kind of explores just all the aspects of what made Jason Jason. So maybe someday,
Oh,
I'd love to
Keaton and
do.
I love Red Hood. We love Jason
I
Todd
love me some
post
Jason Todd.
Joker. He's so great.
Love him. He's
And
so
yeah,
interesting.
he's just unapologetically himself. I mean, like, he struggles with it at times, but yeah, he's just such a great character. That would be
Yeah,
awesome.
if you ever have a chance, I don't know if you ever read my run on Gotham Knights, but I did a Jason Todd specific issue. Um, the there's a longer arc that runs through my run where Gotham Child Protective Services is going after Bruce Wayne because there's one agent
I have
who,
not read this. I would
yeah,
remember.
there's one agent who kind of says, "Hey, this seems a little hinky. That there was this kid that was his ward, and now he's dead." And so they kind of interview all of the Bat family, and I think that I have the distinction of making Bruce Wayne cry during his interview. And one of the final, like the penultimate issue, where this soap operatic part of the story is Barbara Gordon teaming up with Jason Todd, and
Mm,
she's doing it in order to kind of give an assessment to Bruce about his worthiness as a vigilante. And
yeah.
they go and they fight cigarettes smugglers on Gotham Harbor. It has the Batboat. One of them is water skiing behind it. Kind of the big
Nice.
picture stuff that we
Yeah.
dream about in comics. And there's a scene where Jason may have been smoking, kind of exercising like the fact that he's sort of the rebel kid in the
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Batcave. But it's interplays with the present and the past, where essentially, we have the Robin costume in its memoriam chamber in the Batcave, and
Mm,
Barbara, kind of says to him, "I told you that he had problems, and you ignored it,"
mm,
and kind of forces Bruce to confront not only Jason's death, but the fact that he may have rushed him a little too quickly into the Robin costume. And so, there's some accountability there. And when I took over Gotham Knights, the editorial edict was to kind of focus on the family. So
mm.
there's lots of team ups throughout Adam, Metamorpho, some Brave and the Bold stuff, but it kind of just focuses mostly on what it means for these guys to work together, especially because my story is bookended by Bane coming into the Batcave and saying, "I'm your brother," in his Bane voice, and they're like, "Oh no." And so that's what starts it, and it ends up on the slopes of Kilimanjaro No, I'm sorry, Kanchenjunga, which is
Mhm.
one of the lesser Mount Everest, peaks,
Mm.
and a Lazarus Pit and all of that, and Batman,
Gotta have one of
Robin,
those.
Nightwing, and Batgirl, and
Nice.
Bane against the villain who is Bane's father. So a lot of the threads from the year ones kind of, I was able to play with and pull on those also in Gotham Knights. So they've collected the first two editions that collect Devin Grayson's run on Gotham Knights. So I think they're getting close to my run, and maybe DC will collect that someday, because it's a long 17 issue kind of like story arc with single issue stories along the way.
I love all
Awesome.
that family focused stuff.
I do
I just
too.
eat it all up.
I do too.
Yeah,
Even the
yeah. I'll have to find that.
panels that just has the full Bat family. Like I love like any of those where it's just showing the whole gang together, because it's in whenever you see like Justice League, it's like, oh, Batman's the lone wolf, and Batman's always the lone wolf. But now seeing it, and it's like there's so many of them. There's so many different ones that have gone their own way. Duke is there too. Like it's like there's so many different members of the Bat family, and it's so great to see them all interact with each other, because they're all what amazes me is how different all of
Yeah.
them are. Like you would think,
Yeah.
because it's the Batman family, that all of them would kind of be very similar and brooding and dark like Bruce is, and most of them aren't. All of them have something in common with Batman, but none
But
of
even what
them.
they have in common is very different depending who you're looking at.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, it was when they're together and they're talking about Batman, and they're kind of making commentary about Dad, um, or just reacting to each other. Like one of my favorite scenes is in my last issue, Gotham Knights 49, and they've just crashed into the mountain in the Batplane, and they need a diversion, and so Cassandra Cain, as Batgirl, goes outside, pulls her hood back, and tells one of the villains, I'm so scared, please help me. And Robin and Nightwing are listening in on their headsets, and all they hear is just the sound of breaking bones and the screams of the villains as she takes them apart, and they're wincing. They're like, wow, she is so mean, but they wouldn't
love
say it to
Cassandra
her,
Cain.
so it's the brothers talking about the sister, and the stuff really writes itself. Like,
Yep.
if you just
I
lock
love
into
Cassandra Cain.
Yeah.
She's like my favorite. I love her.
yeah.
Yeah.
So just writing those, it's like, I don't know, that's not work. And what, I get paid too? I mean, it's the dream.
Shucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Nice.
Well,
Awesome.
thank you so much for joining us. We've really appreciated it.
Oh, thank you
and-
for having me. I love talking to you guys. And again, thank you for just all the high praise for the books. I really appreciate your deep dives, and just your really just completely insightful and intelligent deep dive into the motivations of the characters. I mean, you guys really get it, and I love that you're able to kind of pass that along to readers that might be interested. It really, I think, sells it to them, and I just love the fact that you're able to use your expertise and what you both do to just talk about comics. I mean, it's such an important literary genre that still is
Yes.
underappreciated despite being part of the cultural zeitgeist. But having literate folks talk about it in a really insightful way and sell it to the masses, I think, is so important.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
Thank you. And yes,
You're welcome. Thank you.
definitely check out the new Year One trilogy. I have seen it at in stores. It is very awesome. I've read all of the books. I love all of the books. They're absolutely amazing. So definitely check it out at your local comic book store if you can. We got Batman Day coming up, so we'll have a chance to.
That's right. Yep, absolutely. Happy Batman Day.
Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JVS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/battherapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.